Welcome to Morning Coffee and Photoshop Tips. My name is Matt Klaskowski. We got another weekly episode for you. I think I missed last week. I forget where I was, but I wasn't here, so I couldn't do last week. But welcome back. Grab your coffee. Let us know what you're drinking in the comments. Let us know where you're from in the comments. Let us know whatever you want in the comments. Just say something nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, go somewhere else. So we're going to get right to it. This is where I do a couple of Photoshop tips, and then I kind of throw it back to you. I prepare 5 to 10 minutes worth of me talking. And then I really just go based on your questions. So if there's no questions, we're over pretty quick. If there are questions, I've gone as long as 25, 30 minutes on here. So this can be, think of it as ask me anything. Whatever is on your mind, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll get started here with some Photoshop tips. Let's see what we got going here. I'm going to switch over to my screen. And so let's talk a little bit about this. Came up a while back in one of the morning coffee Photoshop tips episodes about restoring old photos. So this is actually a photo of my Uncle Phil. How's that for a name? Uncle Phil Zambano. This is like, he's your typical Italian uncle. Super nice guy and just super Italian, and always a fun uncle I remember growing up. But Uncle Phil, this is an older photo, so this is probably, I'm gonna guess, in somewhere in the 60s. So it was scanned in, and we got all these little rips and tears. And guys, I mean, I know it's already color. You guys, I'm sure, have old photos at some point. Maybe you've scanned in or taken a picture of or whatever. If it's a photo from the 1900s and it's got rips and tears in it, it's no different than this. Okay, rips and tears are rips and tears. So here's a couple of thoughts on how I would go about fixing this. When I look at something like this, my thought process is going to go straight to either the clone stamp tool or something like the healing brush tool. Okay, so Mickey Bullen just said, Uncle Phil, forget about it. That's my Uncle Phil. Yeah, that was it. Or that is him, I should say. It was. That still is him. So I'm going to go to the clone stamp tool or the healing brush. The spot healing brush can be a neat little tool when you just want to fix things quick. You have little spots or things, you can just go and just paint over them. Nice part about the spot healing brush tool is we don't have to sample. We don't have to do anything. And I'm not saying it can't remove creases and bends and things. I could just take the spot healing brush and try this. But you can actually see the downfall of the spot healing brush, which is it doesn't let us sample anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to Command or Control Z to undo that. It doesn't let us sample anywhere. Why I like the healing brush and the clone stamp tool are they let us sample. Okay, they let us tell Photoshop what we want to fix with. So let's start with the healing brush here. The healing brush is going to work really good on skin and on very smooth types of backgrounds and things because it's got a little bit of melding to it. It's looking at what you sample from and it's looking at what you're painting over, and it's creating something to heal with. The other reason I like the healing brush is because it lets us sample. So we've got two main options up here in the top options bar when you're using the healing brush. We've got normal and we've got replace. So I'll go over here to normal. And what we'll do is we'll hold down the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on the PC, and you can see that little cursor there. That means we're sampling. So I'm going to click to sample. All right. And then I'm going to move my cursor over and I'm going to brush. And so the healing brush, especially in the mode it's in right now, is actually constantly working as you're painting, right? A little hard to see here, but it's constantly, it's even changing as you're painting, and it's changing its blending. So you can see it did a really nice job of getting rid of that little crease there. I'll do Command or Control plus and zoom in a little bit more. And the other thing with the healing brush is constantly resample. So now I'm going to come over here, Option or Alt click to resample. hit the left bracket key, make my brush a little bit smaller, and then I'll go down there. And I usually do it in pieces, you know, rather than try to do a big long paint stroke. Now I'll go Option or Alt click here and bring my cursor over there and start to paint. All right, Option or Alt click down here, bring my cursor over, start to paint. All right, you can see it's doing a nice job. All right, so one more time, Option or Alt click here and start to paint there. So it's doing a good job. I think sometimes what will happen, and you can see it here, you can see that little dark spot here. What will happen is the healing brush will sometimes pick up a color you don't want it to, or do a little blending and melding that you don't want it to. So when that happens, I'll switch from normal to replace. All right. Now I'll try Option or Alt clicking again up here, and then I'll go down and I'll paint. And what replace does is replace tends to keep a little bit more of the color and texture of what you're painting with. On skin, I wish I could give you one or the other, but it's actually going to be both when you're working with skin. You're going to see another example next that's not anything to do with restoring or anything like that. I think you'll definitely notice the difference there. But we'll go over here, hit the left and right bracket key to resize the brush, Option or Alt click, and then go through and paint. You can see that does a good job of getting rid of that. I'll Command or Control Z to undo. I'm doing this all on the main layer. For me personally, I don't feel a need to work non-destructively in this because this isn't a change I'm ever going to want to get back. I'm never really going to want to undo it, but you could create a new layer in your layers panel. So now you just have a blank layer, okay? And I could come up here and choose Sample All Layers. And what that'll do for me is now when I Option or Alt click here and I start to brush and paint, so Option Alt click, start to brush and paint here, what that's going to do for me is it's going to take that fix and it's going to put it on its own layer. I just created that blank layer there. It's going to put it on its own layer. I know I got a question yesterday, and I think he's in here today, and he might follow up on this question. But somebody had asked me, you know, what's the difference of pressing Command or Control J and duplicating the layer and doing that? There's zero difference. Paint and, you know, yeah, I've just duplicated the layer. Excuse me. I just duplicated the layer. There really is no difference to it. It's just a different way to do the same thing. So whether it's a blank layer or it's a duplicate layer, in this case doesn't make a difference. So that's one option, is to go over there with the healing brush. I'm going to actually try back to normal mode and see what happens here. See, normal in this skin area is actually giving me a better result. So then I'll come down here to the chin, and rather than, again, paint and then try to go and do something like that, you can see that's the problem with normal mode. See what it does there? See how it starts to create this blended mishmash of things? So if I were using replace mode, I'd get a little bit better of a result there. It's not going to be perfect, but I'd get a little bit better of a result with replace mode. It wouldn't smudge it quite as much. But as you're trying to fix these things, what I would say is separate the transitions. And what I mean by that is Option or Alt click. Let's go back to normal here. Option or Alt click here. Bring your cursor over and then paint up and separate it. Then again, go Option or Alt click here, bring your cursor over, match it up to the right spot, and then paint down. Trying to do it all in one stroke when you have a transition like that just really isn't going to work really well. So try to separate those things and you'll get much better results that way. And then the rest of these are just out in open areas. So these will be nice and easy to go in here and fix. Just lots of resampling as I go and paint over. Whenever you see that little crosshair pop up, it just means I held down the Option or Alt key and I'm painting. Okay. So where would I use the clone stamp tool? So that's healing, and you get the idea. Clone stamp tool, I'm probably, when I need to be exact, which is going to be maybe down here in these areas. All right, I might need to be a little bit more exact. I don't need it. I don't want it to do any melding or blending. I want it to be an exact replica of something. So then I would switch to the clone stamp tool. All right, clone, hence the word cloning. So the way that would work, again, left or right bracket key to resize the brush, and Option or Alt click. And that lets me be a little bit more exact about my fixes. All right, I'm not letting any blending happening. I'm saying I want you to fix this, and I want it to be exactly where I cloned from. Okay, so there's places for both. I find little patterns like we have here. I find little patterns, you're going to get slightly better results by cloning. And then I find any place where it's a little bit more open, like we had here, you'll get slightly better results by healing. But again, right along the collar here, I think this is going to be a better one there. So that's a little bit about the difference. Will they both sometimes seem to do the same exact thing? Absolutely. So think of it as, I don't want to get too geeky on you. Think of it as tools in your home, right? Screwdrivers, wrenches, all these things. Could you use this different tools on the same thing? Yeah, you could. But sometimes one just works a little bit better for something than something else. So that's the same thing here. Photoshop's no different than that. Alrighty, so that's one example, and then I'll go jump over onto this one just to show you. So I am actually working on a wildlife editing course right now. So it should be out in about 2 weeks here. So it's been a ton of fun. I got images submitted from my audience. So it's really not my wildlife photos. I'm actually working on everybody else's in the course. But I came across this photo. This is actually my photo. And this is a perfect example of what we can do with a little bit of cloning and healing. Let me share my screen again with you. So we got just a mess of branches. So same thing as before. Let me Command or Control plus to zoom in. And when I have an edge with fur like this, I'm probably gonna go in here with the clone stamp tool first and say, let me clone here, and let me bring that over here, and then let me see if I can paint some of that away. Once I get it away from the edge, cloning does a really good job. You can see, I'm sampling down here. It's got to be close because remember the sky gradiates, and if you take it from, if I go take it from over here and paint over here, it's going to look like an odd blue. But if I keep it pretty close, I can get rid of these. So that's an option to go in there and clone. Another option, and honestly guys, it still works, is to go over here to your healing brush. And in this case, I'm going to keep it on normal, but I want to show you what normal does. This is why I don't like normal for cases like this. See what it does against the edge? See the edge of the brush, how it starts creating this smudge effect? And it changes. It actually changes as I brush, but it's still creating that smudgy edge. All right. If I change this to replace, I get to control my edges much more. See the difference? So that's a really good example. It didn't show up as much on the last example because we didn't have quite a contrasty edge. But see, there's basically no smudginess on the edge here. So I can just go through and paint. Same thing would happen here, is replace also holds texture much better. So I could sample next to this little branch here and then go through and paint, because replace mode will just let me handle that let me handle that texture much better. All right. And then if I were to try to bring this up to the edge, you're going to see it even lets me get to the edge better than if I was trying to do normal mode and trying to do this. Normal mode is going to see how smudgy it gets. So when you're working with skin, when you're working with a lot of those areas, I think normal mode is probably going to be one of the ways that you want to go, because you want that smudginess, because that's what's helping blend it. When you're up against texture or edges, you're probably going to want to switch it to that replace mode. Okay. All right. I am seeing questions pop in here, which is good. That gives us some stuff to talk about. So let's see here. Let's get past all the hellos. Let me see here. So we got ready to rock and roll, Great. Good morning. Lots of coffee. I know there's a question. somewhere. I know I saw. Okay, let's go. We got Richard, and Richard had asked, what computer brightness level for accurate tool settings? So Richard, there's no right answer to it. It's, I keep my brightness. Almost. I have an iMac. I have a 5-year-old iMac here. I keep my brightness set to almost 100%. So maybe 90%-ish. When I print, sometimes I knock that brightness down to about 50% just to proof the photo on the screen, to give me a little bit of a better idea, because printing is always, the photo's always going to look darker when it's printed. So I'll develop it a little bit differently if I'm printing, but there's no right answer to that. I like a big, bright, glossy screen, so I keep my brightness set up to that, but it doesn't affect the way any of the tools work. It's more based on your output. If you're not printing, there's really no reason to not keep your computer brightness up to where everybody else does. And that's the magic answer. What do your viewers of your photos, what do they have their computer set at? Most people just have it set at the defaults right out of the box. John said, will you be putting a photo restoration course sometime? I don't have any plans of it, John, so we'll see. It's again, not quite sure. It's not in the immediate future. Let's see here. For printing only, does soft proofing in Lightroom really improve the colors? Good question, because really common misconception. So soft proofing does nothing to improve colors. Okay, so that's answer number one. And by the way, I know he asked a Lightroom question, but that soft proofing is up in the view menu in Photoshop too. You can soft proof as well. So soft proofing is the process of, you tell the software application, hey, I want you to give me a proof based on this output, okay? And anybody that prints, you download print profiles for the paper and printer you're using. So when I'm soft proofing, I'm saying, hey, look at this profile. I want you to show me if there's going to be any possible problems. And so when you soft proof, it'll pop up these problems, usually in little weird highlight colors and whatnot. So that's all soft proofing is. Soft proofing is letting you know how your photo and any problems that could occur in your photo is going to appear when using that profile. It does nothing to fix it or improve it for you. Now, when you look at the colors and now all of a sudden I'll pop it up here. Let's try this. So I'll do it in Photoshop. So view, I go over here to proof setup, and I'm going to go down to custom, and I'll do device to simulate, and let's scroll down and find some Epson profiles here. So how about, let me do something very, very artsy. How about watercolor paper? Because the more artsy the paper, the less color reproduction you get. So I can do something like, yeah, we'll go one of these here. So how about something like paper matte, fine art paper, velvet fine art paper. We'll go velvet fine art paper. So the glossier the papers you use, and by the way, I should share my screen with you. There we go. So let me do that one more time. View, proof setup, and go over here to custom. And this is in Photoshop. Again, Lightroom's got soft proofing. You can look that up as well. And then under here, I say device to simulate, and I go down and I just choose one of these profiles inside of here. So again, I'll do like a fine art matte. Your glossy papers will reproduce more colors, okay? So I've told it what device I want to simulate. Then I need to come up here to view and make sure that gamut warning is turned on, all right? Now, you're not going to see anything here because there's no problems with any of the colors here. So let's switch over to here. And so I'm going to artificially see if I can simulate some gamut warning problems. I'm just going to crank up the saturation on here. So again, gamut warning. There we go. So see that gamut warning? That's that gray area. All right, so that's what Photoshop's letting you know there's a problem with. And then at that point, the only thing you can really do is go into things like hue and saturation or selective color, and you can start pulling back saturation and color, because that's generally what it's letting you know. It's generally letting you know that those colors are not going to reproduce well on that paper that you chose. So, all right, let's see here. So, somebody said, why don't you work on a duplicate layer rather than a background layer? Just doesn't matter. I'm not a non-destructive editor, so the non-destructive police are constantly on my tail. Again, I'm removing a crease from a photo. That's never anything I'm ever going to want to go back and change. So for me, it's not worth it. But again, everybody works a little bit differently. So I know some people always try to work non-destructively. Totally fine. You can duplicate your layer or work on a blank one. We got one. Would you use frequency separation technique in these restoration photos, or is that going overboard? I don't use frequency separation on anything. So I know the technique. I've done it before. I've tried it before. If you paid me $1 million to do frequency separation right now, I couldn't do it, because it was one of those things that I learned, I tried, I never saw benefit from, so it kind of just moved out of my peripheral. So, most of the time that frequency separation is a high fashion technique. When you see magazine covers and things, that's, those people that do that work are generally using frequency separation for an old photo or for something that's not going to be shown in large detail. I don't think it's worth it. Let's see here. So we got another one from Leon. I think Leon's the one that asked me some of that layers. Question: background plus 2 duplicate layers, a color adjustment on the top, stays on the top layer only. When I crop that top layer, it also appears cropped on the 2 layers. So Leon, you don't get to crop a layer. A layer is part of a Photoshop document, so you can't just crop a specific layer. When you crop, you are cropping the entire Photoshop document. So if you wanted that color adjustment layer just to affect a part of the photo, if you just wanted it to affect a small area of the photo, that's when you'd have to use a layer mask for it. But you can't just crop one layer and not crop others. Let's see here. Bruce asked, how do you set up lens corrections, turn on, detail, turn off as presets to be applied during RAW import? So when you're inside of Lightroom, there's actually an option. If you go into your preferences in Lightroom, there's a preference in there for setting defaults. So you can set a preset. So you can make a preset with those settings, and in your Lightroom preferences, you can just set the default to that preset. So it'll get applied to all your photos. Let's see here. The image on the screen, the thumbnail images only show the color adjustment on the top layer and not the crop. Not quite sure where you're going with that, Leon. So let's see here. And then looks like we got a couple of comments on there that are just saying hi. So Leon, if you want to, I know you've been on the website and all that stuff, so you can shoot me a message on there if you want to take that conversation. I don't understand it, but feel free to shoot me a message if you want to send some screen caps or something along with that over on the website, and I can try to help you there. We got Maria saying you don't use a screen calibration tool. Nope, I don't. I've tried it. I've spent my money on it. I've spent my time on it. And for me personally, I've never noticed a difference or a need to use it. But of course, everybody's mileage varies a little bit. So if you do, then by all means, continue to use it. All right, guys, that is it for morning coffee. It's morning coffee, but I never actually drink my coffee. It just sits here because I'm talking the whole time. But I'm going to have a sip. Hold on. Wait. There we go. Had my sip from my Buccaneers Championship morning coffee mug. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Oh, by the way, if you know anybody that's into this stuff, there's a little share button at the bottom of your YouTube thing. If you could share the video, I would greatly appreciate it. There's obviously only so many people that are online watching at this time, but I really appreciate it if you would consider sharing this if you got a photography group or some friends or something along those lines. Okay, thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And if I put my events on my website, so you just go to mattkay.com, you can click on events in the top menu there so you can see what other ones that I have planned as well. Okay, talk to you again soon, guys. Take care.